I used to believe that if you worked hard, loved deeply, and forgave when it counted, life would eventually settle into something beautiful. And for a while, it did. My name is Elena Morris. I'm 34 years old, and I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside San Diego, California. I run a boutique interior design firm that started out of my garage 8 years ago. Now, it's my full-time passion, my therapy, and my legacy. I built it from scratch with a laptop, 3 clients, and more coffee than I care to admit. My husband, Adam, is a real estate developer, or, as he likes to put it, a dream home matchmaker. He's charming, smooth-talking, and devastatingly confident. The kind of man who could sell sand to a beachgoer and make them thank him for it. We've been married for 10 years. A whole decade of birthdays, career wins, vacation photos, inside jokes, and one brief, very painful chapter we agreed to leave behind. The affair. It happened 5 years ago, with a colleague of his. It nearly broke me, but I forgave him. Not because I was weak, believe me, it took everything in me not to walk away, but because I still believed in us. I believed in second chances. He apologized. He swore it would never happen again. We did therapy. He wrote me letters. He cried. I wanted Zoe, our 6-year-old daughter, to grow up in a home that wasn't torn in half. And I wanted to believe that people could change. And for a while, he did. He came home on time. He held my hand again. He praised my work, supported my projects, even joined in our Mommy and Zoe pancake Saturdays. We found a rhythm. It was soft, safe, and surprisingly joyful. That Saturday morning, I remember waking up to the smell of cinnamon and maple syrup. Zoe had snuck into the kitchen early and convinced Adam to make pancakes my recipe. Of course, which she insisted he follow exactly, or else they'd taste like sad breakfast. I walked in, hair a mess, still wearing one of Adam's oversized college sweatshirts. Zoe grinned up at me with powdered sugar on her cheeks. Adam looked over his shoulder, smiled, and said, "You're just in time for the final flip." It felt normal, good. Even we ate together on the patio, sunlight warming the table, as Zoe tried to explain the difference between real syrup and the fake kind. Adam leaned back, arm draped lazily over the chair behind me. "This is the life," he said, eyes meeting mine, and for a brief moment, I believed it. I believed that the storm had passed, that we had made it through the worst of it, that I was safe again. I had no idea that the real betrayal, the one that would change everything, was just around the corner. But looking back now, the signs weren't just there, they were practically screaming. I just didn't want to hear them. That afternoon, after the pancakes and sunshine faded, Adam got a call. He stepped inside quickly, his hand tightening around his phone like it might leap away. I caught a sliver of his voice, low-clipped, and not meant for me. When I walked into the living room 5 minutes later, he was sitting on the couch, phone nowhere in sight, scrolling through ESPN like nothing had happened. "Everything okay?" I asked casually, pretending not to feel the shift in the air. "Yeah, just some contractor drama," he said, not looking up. "Same old." I nodded. That's what I always did. Nod, smile, keep the peace. But that evening, while folding laundry, I noticed something else. His shirt smelled different. Not like his usual cedar and musk cologne, but floral, faintly sweet, and definitely not mine. It clung to the fabric like a whisper. I held it in my hands a second too long. I didn't say anything. Because maybe I was just imagining it. Maybe it was detergent from the dry cleaner. Maybe I was paranoid, still carrying ghosts from the affair 5 years ago that I had supposedly buried. That night in bed, I lay beside him while he slept, snoring lightly, one arm flung over his chest like he didn't have a care in the world. I watched him, searching for something. A hint, a flicker, a crack. There was nothing. Until the next morning. "Hey," I said, pouring him coffee. "Are you still meeting with that new client on Tuesday? The one looking for the beachfront remodel?" He blinked. Just one flicker too long. "Ah, what?" "The one you mentioned last week." "Madeline, right." He stared at the steam rising from his cup like it might hold the answer. "Oh, right, yeah, I think she rescheduled. Or maybe her assistant did, not sure." I froze. Madeline. That name hadn't entered our lives in years. She was a former client of mine. We'd renovated her downtown condo together when I was just starting out. Young, wealthy, polished, and almost unnervingly charming. We'd grabbed lunch a few times, talked about books. She had a sharp wit and an even sharper smile. Until one day, out of nowhere, she ghosted me. Stopped replying to emails, Left our final invoice unpaid. No explanation. I chalked it up to flaky rich girl behavior and let it go. But now, here she was back, and suddenly tied to Adam. Funny, I said, too brightly. I didn't know she was working with you now. Adam shrugged. She's doing some investing. Small stuff. Don't think it'll go anywhere. But something inside me cracked just the tiniest bit, because Adam was never vague about work. He loved talking about work. He once explained a land permit zoning battle to me in excruciating detail because I made the mistake of asking how his day was. But now, suddenly, he didn't want to talk about a new investor, client one I used to know. I stared at him for a long moment, and he smiled. That same smile I once found irresistible. The one that had convinced me to stay, to forgive, to believe. This time, though it felt like a mask, I forced a smile back, kissed his cheek, and sent him off to work. But as the door closed behind him, something in my chest twisted. I didn't know what he was hiding, but I was going to find out. And I wouldn't wait for the truth to show itself this time. I'd go looking for it. The next morning, while Adam was in the shower, I opened the drawer where he kept his work files. It wasn't like me to snoop. I hated the feeling. My hands trembled, not from guilt, but from fear. Fear that I already knew what I was going to find. His leather-bound planner sat right on top, the same one he carried into meetings. Flipping through the pages, I scanned dates, scribbled notes, property addresses. Then paused. Tuesday, 2 p.m. M at Four Seasons, just the letter M. Like it meant nothing. Like it was no one. My stomach dropped. Madeline. There were two things Adam never did: schedule meetings at hotels, and abbreviate things in his planner. He was always meticulous, always precise. This was messy. This was careful in the way careless men try to be when they're hiding something. I snapped a photo with my phone, closed everything, and walked out like nothing happened. But inside, the unraveling had begun. Later that afternoon, I told my assistant I needed to step out for a site visit. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but the truth had become more important than my pride. At exactly 1:55 p.m., I sat inside the lobby of the Four Seasons, half hidden behind a giant vase of orchids and a cold glass of cucumber water. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I told myself I'd give it 15 minutes. Just enough to confirm I was being paranoid and go home to laugh at myself. But at 2:04 p.m., I saw him dot on wearing the blazer he usually saved for investor meetings and anniversaries. And then, a moment later, her Madeline. She looked exactly the same. Lilith, sleek, like she'd walked out of a lifestyle magazine ad for heartbreak. Her hand grazed his arm as they walked past me. He leaned in to whisper something, and she laughed light, easy, familiar. Neither of them saw me, but I saw everything. I sat frozen, watching them disappear down the hallway toward the elevators. An actual, physical ache bloomed in my chest. The kind of pain that feels too big to fit inside your ribs. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. It wasn't just betrayal, it was betrayal again. By the same man, with someone I knew. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring me to this world. When Adam walked in that night, he kissed me on the forehead, like nothing had happened. Long meeting, I asked. Casual, smiling with my lips but not my eyes. He blinked. Yeah, took forever. These investors love to talk. I nodded. Four Seasons has nice meeting rooms. He stiffened just a beat. Oh, he said too quickly, we were just grabbing coffee. You know how it is. I stared at him, my smile sharpening. Yes, I said softly. I know exactly how it is. And for the first time in years, I watched him lie to me while knowing the truth. Adam paused, eyes narrowing like he sensed something had shifted. But I kept my expression calm, my voice light. I wasn't ready to confront him. Not yet. Not without everything, because the first time he betrayed me, I was blindsided. This time, I wanted to be prepared. That night, I sat in Zoe's room longer than usual. She was already asleep, her tiny arms wrapped around a worn stuffed bunny. I studied her face, so peaceful, so trusting. She deserved more than this. She deserved a mother who didn't smile through betrayal. A home built on more than carefully curated lies. The next morning, while Adam left for work, I made a call I never thought I'd make again. Carmen, I said, the second she picked up Alina. Her voice lit up. It's been years. Is everything okay? Not really, I replied. I need help. The kind only you know how to give. Carmen was a former client-turned-private investigator, retired from law enforcement. She helped me years ago during the first affair, when everything in my life was falling apart. She had a way of finding truth no matter how deeply it was buried. I think he's doing it again, I whispered. You want confirmation? I want proof. I want names. I want phone logs. I want receipts. I want every lie laid bare in front of me. There was silence on the other end. Then, I'll take care of it. That same afternoon, I couldn't help myself. I searched for Madeline online, every social, every link, every news hit. Her LinkedIn said real estate investment consultant. Her Instagram was carefully curated: ocean views, cappuccinos, designer bags, yoga poses on cliffs. Not a single picture of Adam. Not one clue. But her newest post made my skin crawl. It was a boomerang video. 2 glasses of white wine clinking together. Caption: building more than properties these days. It was posted at exactly 2:37 p.m. on Tuesday, the day they met at the Four Seasons. My stomach flipped. I reread the caption, my fingers going cold. Building more than properties. I felt it deep in my gut. This wasn't casual. This wasn't meaningless. This was intimate. She was marking territory. Not with his name, but with implication. She wasn't hiding. It was me who didn't know. Adam came home late that night, said traffic was bad, said he had to swing by a site downtown, said he missed dinner but was starving. I handed him leftovers, smiled sweetly, and asked how M was doing. He blinked, fork halfway to his mouth. Who? I tilted my head. Your planner, Tuesday, 2 p.m. M at the Four Seasons. He stared at me. You went through my planner? He asked, the calm dropping from his voice like a mask sliding off. Just happened to glance at it, I said softly. Funny how the details jump out when you're looking for them. He forced a laugh. Too thin, too brittle. Alina, you're reading into things again. Am I? I said. Or are you just not saying enough to stop me? He stood up, fast. You're making something out of nothing. And I just looked at him, long and hard, and said quietly, then prove it's nothing. Or stop asking me to be the only one pretending. Adam didn't answer. He just stood there, fork abandoned, face locked in that tight-lipped panic men wear when they know they've been shined but haven't figured out how to spin it yet. Alina, he finally said, don't do this again. Again, as if I was the one stirring ghosts. As if my suspicion was the real betrayal here. But I said, nothing, because the silence between us had begun to speak louder than the lies ever could. The next morning, Carmen texted me, meet me at the cafe. I have something. I left the office early and met her at a small place tucked between a flower shop and a wine bar, neutral ground. Carmen looked the same. Sharp, practical, no time for sugarcoating. She slid a manila envelope across the table. I hesitated. Alina, she said, gently but firmly. You asked for the truth. It's in there. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were photos, grainy zoomed in, taken from a distance but clear enough. Adam, in the same blazer. Madeline, laughing beside him. One hand resting casually on his thigh under the table. Another photo, him brushing a strand of hair from her face. Another, him following her into the hotel. A timestamp, Tuesday, 2:11 p.m. I stared at the images for so long, the edges blurred. My ears rang. Something in me cracked wide open, like a glass dropped from too high. I'm so sorry, Carmen said quietly. He's been meeting her once a week. Same location. Same pattern. This isn't business. No, it wasn't. This was deliberate, repeated, intimate. He was doing it again with her. After everything. After the therapy. The promises. The rebuilding. The child. I nodded, swallowing the scream in my throat. I thought if I was better, I just tried harder. Alina, she cut in. This isn't about you not being enough. This is about him not being true. I drove home that evening in silence. Adam was in the kitchen pouring wine, acting like he hadn't just torn our entire life apart. Again, rough day, he asked, smiling that same casual, confident smile, and something inside me snapped. Not rage, not a scream, just a quiet, terrifying clarity. I smiled right back. Not at all, because now I knew, and knowing was no longer the hard part. What I'd do with the truth. That was what came next. And I wasn't going to fall apart this time. Not like before. The first affair had left me crumpled on the bathroom floor, gasping, between sobs while Adam begged for forgiveness. But not this time. This time, I wouldn't crumble, I would calculate. I waited until Zoe was asleep, curled up in her cloud-covered sheets, before opening my laptop. The screen glowed softly in the dark, the cursor blinking like it was daring me to begin. First, I opened my financial accounts, then our joint ones, then his business website, then a quiet browser tab for a divorce lawyer, someone discreet, someone sharp. I didn't know if I would file. Not yet, but I needed to know what my options were. I refused to be blindsided again. For the next few days, I played the part of the loving wife like it was a role I'd been born for. Smiling at the breakfast table, packing lunches, answering client calls like nothing was wrong, all while keeping Carmen updated on every little detail. But the worst part wasn't the pretending. It was the way Adam kept lying effortlessly. Late night tonight, babe, site inspection ran long. Oh, you should have seen the zoning meeting today's news fest. Every time he spun a story, it got easier for me to smile back. Because now, I was building something to only mine wasn't a lie. It was a plan. A slow, careful strategy to untangle my life from his, without letting him see the scissors in my hand. But then came the day that broke the illusion. It was a Thursday. I had just finished a meeting with a high-profile client, an interior remodel on a multi-million-dollar coastal home. I was feeling sharp, steady, like I could do this, until I got the message. A screenshot from Carmen. Adam's car, parked outside Madeline's condo. 11:47 a.m. Photo taken today. Caption, he's not even trying to hide it anymore. And he wasn't, because that night, Adam didn't bother with a lie. I had a meeting downtown, he said, tossing his keys into the bowl like nothing mattered. Grabbed lunch while I was there. Something in me shifted. You saw Madeline, I said calmly, watching his reaction with clinical precision. His shoulders stiffened for just a second. I told you, she's an investor. No, I said, cutting him off. She's not, and you're not meeting about work. He laughed, a hollow, sharp sound. You're imagining things again. We've been over this. Stop gaslighting me, I said quietly. I know where you were. I know what you've been doing, and for the first time, he didn't deny it. He just stood there, silent, staring at me. That silence told me more than any words ever could. I had my confirmation. I had my plan, and now I had the power. But power, I realized, didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered, sometimes it waited, and sometimes it wore a smile so convincing, even a liar like Adam couldn't see the trap being set. For the next few days, I said nothing more. Not a single confrontation, no emotional outburst, just calm. And that calm rattled him far more than my accusations ever had. He watched me closely, probably wondering if I was unraveling or planning to. I gave him no answer, only patience, only silence. And while he whispered into late-night phone calls in the hallway, while he worked late 3 nights in a row, I was quietly laying the final pieces of my exit. The first was financial. I opened a private account and began rerouting small amounts of income from my business. Nothing dramatic, nothing traceable. Carmen introduced me to a quiet accountant who helped me understand where our assets were, how they were protected, and how they could be moved. The second was legal. I met with an attorney who specialized in complex divorces. She listened. She took notes. She didn't flinch when I laid it all out: his affairs, his manipulation, the business assets he tried to hide. Alina, she said, folding her hands on the desk. You're in a stronger position than you realize. If you want to fight, you can win. I smiled. I wasn't just going to win, I was going to redefine the game. But then, one unexpected message almost brought it all down. ADM, from Madeline. I think we should talk. Woman to woman, I never meant to hurt you. I stared at the screen, stunned. The audacity, the nerve. What did she want? Forgiveness, a conversation, a chance to justify what she'd done. I didn't reply, not yet. But the next morning, Adam came home with a single red rose and an apology typed out in a long, ridiculous text. You've been distant lately. I want us to reconnect. Let's take a weekend trip. Just us. Start over again. I almost laughed out loud. Start over. He wanted to reboot the marriage like a broken laptop. If betrayal was just a system glitch and all it needed was a fresh install. I stared at the rose on the counter, the petals already curling at the edges, and I whispered to myself, you don't get to hit reset after setting the whole house on fire. He had no idea what was coming, because I wasn't waiting to be saved. I was saving myself. But the moment you decide to take your power back, life has a cruel way of testing whether you're ready to hold it. That test came on a Tuesday morning: gray skies, Light rain, the kind of weather that makes people believe the world is softer than it is. I arrived at my office early, armed with a latte and a quiet resolve. I had a meeting with a new client at 10, and I was looking forward to burying myself in floor plans and fabric swatches, anything but the mess I was still pretending wasn't waiting at home. But the second I stepped through the door, I knew something was wrong. My assistant, Leela, looked up with wide eyes. "Alina, have you checked your email?" No, I hadn't. She turned her monitor slightly. And there it was, subject, breach of contract, immediate termination from Cityside Properties. LLC. Cityside was our biggest client, the account Adam had helped me land a year ago. I clicked on the thread. The email was cold, formal, and devastating. They were pulling out of our multi-property redesign deal, citing concerns over confidentiality and professional conflict of interest. I read it 3 times before I understood. This wasn't about business. This was personal. Adam, he had pulled strings behind the scenes. Poisoned the deal. Used our history to plant doubt, to hurt me financially, quietly, cleanly, with no fingerprints. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. It wasn't just the money though, the loss was massive. It was the message. He wasn't just cheating. He was erasing me. Leela hovered nearby. Should I call them? No, I said, barely recognizing my voice. I'll handle it. But inside, I was splintering. That afternoon, I went to Zoe's school to pick her up early, just to see her face. Just to remind myself why I had to keep going. She came running into my arms. All sunshine and crayons, and stories about a field trip next week. And as I held her, I realized something else. I couldn't wait any longer. I had lost a client, a contract, and the last remnants of the man I once loved, but I still had me, and I still had her. So that night, I stood in front of Adam while he poured himself another glass of wine, like nothing had happened. "Did you talk to Cityside lately?" I asked calmly. He blinked. "Why?" "They dropped me. Said there were professional concerns." "Any idea what that's about?" He shrugged, too quickly. "Sounds like a you problem." I nodded slowly, then said, "So we're past the part where you even pretend to care." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. And that was the final confirmation. Not the emails, not the photos, not even Madeline's message. It was this. His emptiness. His quiet willingness to watch me fall. He thought he had one. But what he didn't know was that my quiet wasn't surrender. It was strategy. And I still had one final move left. And it had to count because everything else had already been stripped away. I spent that night staring at the ceiling. Zoe's soft breathing from the next room, the only sound keeping me tethered to the moment. I had a choice. A final one. And it wasn't just about Adam anymore. It was about who I wanted to be when this was all over. I could walk away quietly. Sign the papers. Divide the assets. Let him think he'd won. Or I could take back the narrative. Not with vengeance, but with truth. With dignity. With a plan that left no room for him to twist the story into something that painted me as the unstable wife or the emotional wreck. I chose the second. I woke up the next morning with a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. The storm had passed. What was left was just clarity. Step 1. I replied to Madeline's message. "I'm free to talk, but only in person. Just you and me." She agreed instantly. We met at a quiet cafe near the marina, the kind of place where no one knew either of us. She showed up 10 minutes early, just as polished and perfect as ever, but with eyes that flickered with nerves. "Alina," she said with a brittle smile. "You look strong." "I am." She blinked. I think she was expecting tears. Maybe a meltdown. Instead, I stirred my coffee slowly and said, "So, let's be honest for once." She fumbled, apologized, claimed she never meant for it to go this far. "I didn't know how serious you two were." "Stop," I cut in. "You knew we were married. You knew we had a daughter. You knew everything." She looked down, guilt finally creasing the corners of her mouth. "Do you love him?" I asked. Madeline hesitated. "I thought I did, but now, I think he just made me feel needed." I exhaled. That's what he's good at. Making women feel like they're the answer to his emptiness. I slid an envelope across the table. Inside, printed photos, timelines, emails. Carmen had pulled proof that he'd been cheating on both of us. Overlapping dates. Double lives. "You weren't the only one," I said quietly. "He's been doing this for years." Her face paled. "What you do with that," I said, standing, "is up to you. But I won't be silenced. Not anymore." Step 2. I went public. On my terms. That weekend, I posted a statement on my business, social media, not petty, not angry, just honest. I told my followers, my clients, my partners, I was going through a personal transition, stepping away from my marriage, and standing by my truth. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The support was immediate and overwhelming. Messages poured in. Not pity, respect. Clients wanted to stay. Some even said they trusted me more now. Seeing my strength. Adam saw the post. He stormed into the kitchen that evening, holding his phone like it was a weapon. "What is this?" he demanded. "It's the truth," I said simply. "I'm no longer going to protect your reputation at the cost of my peace. You're ruining everything." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You did that. I'm just choosing not to lie about it anymore." And in that moment, I saw something shift in his eyes. Not regret. Not sorrow, fear. Because for the first time, I wasn't the one begging to be chosen. I had made my choice. And now, the ending was mine to write. But endings are rarely neat. They don't arrive with confetti or closure. They smolder, unravel, leave ashes in your lungs long after the fire is out. The morning after my post went live, I woke up to 3 things: a full inbox, a missed call from Adam's attorney, and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I made Zoe breakfast banana pancakes this time, with extra syrup. She giggled, syrup dripping down her chin, asking if we could make a Just Us Girls Day every Saturday. I said yes. I didn't cry. Not when I packed up Adam's things into boxes. Not when I deleted our shared calendar. Not even when I moved our wedding album into the attic. But later that night, I sat alone on the patio with a cup of tea and my wedding ring in my palm. And that's when the tears finally came, not for him, but for me, for all the versions of myself I had silenced. The one who stayed. The one who hoped. The one who believed that love alone could change someone who had no intention of changing. I didn't hear Adam come outside until his shadow crossed the patio light. "You boxed up my things?" he asked quietly. I didn't look at him. "They don't belong here anymore." "Alina," he began. "No," I said, holding up a hand. "You had chances. You had years. And you used every single one to lie a little more." He sat down. Slowly. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said, finally turning to him. "Because if you had meant to, at least it would have required a decision. But what you did was worse. You didn't even think. You didn't care, not about me. Not about Zoe. Not even about yourself." His face fell, like he was hearing something he hadn't prepared for. "You told the world before you told me?" he asked. I met his gaze. "The world didn't betray me. You did." He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. That weekend, I filed the papers. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt like breathing after holding my breath for far too long. But then came the part no one warns you about, the after. The quiet, the blank space where a marriage used to live. Some clients disappeared. Others doubled down with support. My best friend took me out for margaritas and karaoke. I didn't sing, but I laughed so hard I almost forgot the shape of grief, almost, until Zoe asked, "Is Daddy moving away forever?" I knelt beside her, brushing a curl from her cheek. "Daddy will still be around. But you and I were building something new, something just for us." She nodded slowly. "Like a clubhouse." I smiled. "Exactly like a clubhouse." And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a chapter closing, it was a foundation being poured. One I was building not on betrayal, but on truth, on me, and that truth raw, unfiltered. Sometimes terrifying was more freeing than any apology he could have ever given me. The house was quieter now, not empty, just mine. The silence wasn't hollow anymore. It was clean, peaceful. No more rehearsing arguments in my head. No more wondering what version of Adam would walk through the door. No more flinching at the sound of a late-night text on his phone. I started rearranging the living room one morning, just because I could. I painted the walls a soft sage green, replaced the old rug he insisted on keeping, and bought a new set of dishes that didn't remind me of fake anniversary toasts and forced date nights. Zoe noticed. "I like our new house," she said. "It's the same house?" I replied with a smile. She looked around and shrugged. "It feels different. It feels happier." That was the moment I knew I had made the right choice, not just for me, but for her. Still, Adam tried. Once or twice, he reached out. A long text about wanting to do better. A voicemail saying he missed the family we built, but I didn't respond. Not because I hated him, but because I finally loved myself more than I loved the fantasy of him. The lawyer called a week later to let me know the papers had been signed on his end. "It's official," she said. I stared out the window, sunlight pouring across my desk. It was over, and I didn't fall apart. That night I made dinner, for just the two of us, Zoe and me. We lit a candle, because why not? She made a toast with her cup of apple juice. "Two new beginnings," she said. I clinked my glass against hers, barely holding back tears, but not tears of loss. Tears of arrival. I had made it to the other side, and not just standing, but stronger. The next morning, I opened an email from a dream client I had once assumed I'd never land. A luxury property in Santa Barbara. The kind of project that would take my firm to the next level. She had followed my story. She said she admired my courage. "Alina," she wrote, "you don't just design spaces, you reclaim them." I closed my laptop slowly, heart pounding in the best way. Yes, that's exactly what I was doing. Reclaiming my voice, my peace, my worth, my life. Asterisk, and the woman I was becoming. She wasn't born in comfort. She rose from the ashes of everything I thought I needed to survive. I used to believe strength meant holding on, keeping the marriage intact, staying for the child, forgiving without healing. But now I knew, real strength was walking away with nothing but your dignity and deciding that's enough to start over. The old me, she would have begged him to love her again. The new me, she didn't ask for love, she commanded respect. It had been 3 weeks since the divorce was finalized, and for the first time in years, I no longer flinched when someone mentioned his name. I no longer had to fake a smile when people asked, "How's married life?" There was no pretending left in my only peace. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. Zoe and I were at the farmer's market when I saw him, Adam alone standing by a booth with fresh flowers in his hand, looking lost. He noticed us, of course. How could he not? I saw his eyes catch on Zoe's hand in mine, the bounce in her step, the way she laughed without a care in the world. She was healing because I was healing. She was thriving because we were free. He approached, hesitantly. "Hey." I gave a polite nod. "Hi." He looked at Zoe. "Hey, sweet pea." She waved briefly, but her smile faded fast. She leaned in and whispered, "Can we go now, Mommy?" I nodded. "We're late for her art class." Adam swallowed, searching for words. "You look good." "I am good," I said, my voice calm and even. "Better, actually." He shifted. "I didn't realize how much I hurt you. Until it was too late." I didn't flinch. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I replied. But it was never going to be me again. He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then stopped. Because he saw it, the change, not bitterness, not spite, just a woman who no longer needed to be chosen, because she had chosen herself. That night, I journaled for the first time in months. I wrote not about pain, but about power. Not about betrayal, but about rebirth. How being shattered gave me space to rebuild. How walking through fire burned away the lies and left only the truth. And I realized something simple, something quiet, something sacred. He didn't break me. He revealed me. Asterisk, and once the truth came into the light, I could never go back to who I was before. I didn't want to. That version of me, the one who doubted her worth, who clung to promises patched with lies, who mistook survival for love, she was gone. She died quietly the day I let him walk away without begging him to stay. Now months later, I stood in the home I'd rebuilt, not just with paint and new furniture, but with peace. The rooms were lighter. So was my heart. It was Zoe's birthday. Just 7 years old, already wise in ways I never wanted her to be. But she smiled, now freely. No longer watching the tension between her parents like a storm waiting to hit. No longer trying to shrink herself so she wouldn't be in the way of adult conflict. Our little backyard was filled with laughter, pink balloons, and children chasing bubbles. My friends were there. My sister flew in from Seattle, and even Carmen came holding a wrapped gift and a quiet smirk of pride. "You look like someone who made it," she whispered in my ear. I smiled. I did. Adam was invited. I had done that for Zoe, not for him, and when he arrived, late and visibly uncomfortable, I greeted him with grace, not warmth, but dignity. The kind of dignity you earn when you've crawled through betrayal and come out shining. He handed Zoe her gift, overcompensating, of course. She smiled politely, said thank you, and ran off with her friends. And for a few minutes, he just stood there, watching us. I could feel it, the weight in his stare, The dawning realization: I hadn't lost everything. He had. He had lost a woman who would have fought beside him, a family who loved him without condition, a future he was too blind to protect. You really moved on, he said quietly, not as an accusation but almost in awe. Yes, I said, eyes steady. Because you gave me no choice. He looked down, and I didn't feel triumph. I didn't need to. Because the most powerful revenge isn't transformation. When the party ended, Zoe fell asleep on the couch, frosting on her cheek. A paper crown still tilted on her head. I covered her with a blanket, kissed her forehead, and stood in the doorway, just watching her. She was safe. She was happy. We were whole. In the end, Adam had burned the bridge between us, thinking I'd stay stranded on the other side. But what he didn't know was I had learned to swim, and when I reached the shore, I built a new world. One that didn't need his shadow to feel real. One where I was no longer the woman begging to be loved, but the woman who had finally to love herself.